What if I told you that everything you've been taught about money is wrong? That while you're stressing over bank balances and credit scores, there's a financial system so powerful, so abundant, that it makes Wall Street look like pocket change. Florence Scovel understood something that 99% of people never discover. She cracked the code to a divine economy where recession doesn't exist, where inflation can't touch you, and where your provision flows from a source that never runs dry. This isn't some feel-good philosophy. This is spiritual law in action. Right now, millions are living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in debt, terrified of the next economic crash. But what if you could step out of that broken system entirely? What if you could access an account that has your name on it, filled with everything you need, waiting for just one thing, your faith? The wealthy elite don't want you to know this. Secret. The financial institutions profit from your fear. But Florence Scovel revealed the truth that changes everything. God is your banker, and faith is your currency. Buckle up, because what you're about to discover will shatter every limitation you've accepted about money. This is your financial awakening. The divine banking system. Picture this. You walk into the most exclusive bank in the world. No credit check required, no minimum balance, no fees, no interest rates. The vault is infinite, and your account has been pre-approved since the day you were born. Sounds impossible? Welcome to heaven's economy. Florence Scovel discovered what the financial world desperately tries to hide. There's a banking system that operates on entirely different principles than anything on earth. While traditional banks require money to make money, this divine system requires only one thing: belief. Pure, unwavering faith becomes your access card to unlimited abundance. Think about how broken the current system is. You work 40 hours a week, pay taxes, insurance, bills, and still find yourself stressed about money. You're told to save. For retirement, invest wisely, diversify your portfolio. But what happens when the market crashes? When companies fail? When inflation devours your savings? You're left powerless, at the mercy of forces beyond your control. But Florence Scovel revealed something revolutionary. You were never meant to be a slave to this system. You're royalty in a kingdom where scarcity doesn't exist. The problem isn't that there's not enough money in the world. The problem is that most people are trying to access abundance through the wrong bank. In God's economy, there are no recessions. When the stock market plummets, your divine account remains untouched. When unemployment soars, your source of provision stays constant. When others panic about inflation, you rest in the knowledge that your supply comes from a treasury that never fluctuates with earthly conditions. This isn't about becoming irresponsible with money or ignoring practical wisdom. This is about understanding the source behind all provision. Your job, your business, your investments, these are merely channels. The river that flows through them comes from an eternal spring that never runs dry. Florence Scovel witnessed this principle in action countless times. People who aligned with this truth found opportunities opening where others saw only closed doors. Resources appeared exactly when needed. Debts were forgiven in supernatural ways. Provision flowed from directions they never could have planned or predicted. The secret lies in understanding that you're not working for money. Money is working for you. When you operate from the divine banking system, you stop chasing and start attracting. You stop begging and start receiving. You stop living from lack and start living from overflow. But here's what trips most people up. This system requires a complete mindset shift. You can't access divine abundance while clinging to fear-based thinking. You can't withdraw from heaven's account while making deposits of doubt, worry, and scarcity consciousness. The wealthy understand this principle. Even if they don't call it spiritual, they think differently about money. They see opportunities where others see problems. They invest in assets while others accumulate liabilities. They create systems that generate wealth while others trade time for dollars. But what Florence Scovel revealed goes even deeper. She showed that true wealth, consciousness, isn't just about strategy, it's about spiritual alignment. When you recognize God as your ultimate source, every financial decision becomes an act of faith rather than an act of fear. This doesn't mean money magically appears without any action on your part. It means your actions become inspired rather than desperate. Instead of forcing doors open, you find them swinging wide at just the right moment. Instead of struggling to make ends meet, you discover that your needs are met in ways you never could have orchestrated. The divine banking system operates on principles that seem backwards to the natural world. In traditional banking, you must have something to get something. In God's economy, you receive first, then give. You're blessed to be a blessing. The more you release in faith, the more flows back to you. Florence Scovel's revelation was this: stop trying to fund your future through human effort alone. Start partnering with divine intelligence. Stop measuring your worth by your net worth. Start understanding that your value in God's kingdom gives you access to resources beyond anything the earthly system can provide. When you make this shift, everything changes. Your stress about money dissolves. Your decisions become clearer. Your provision becomes not just adequate, but abundant. You step out of survival mode and into the flourishing life you were always meant to live. Faith as currency. The transaction. Here's the mind-blowing truth that will revolutionize how you think about money forever. Faith operates exactly like currency, but with one crucial difference. It never loses its value, never runs out, and multiplies the more you use it. Florence Scovel understood something that escaped even the greatest financial minds of her time. While economists debated gold standards and market theories, she discovered the ultimate currency that transcends every earthly monetary system. Faith isn't just a nice spiritual concept. It's the actual medium of exchange in the divine economy. Think about how money works in the physical world. You earn it, you spend it, you lose it, you save it, you exchange it for goods and services. You worry about having enough. You compete with others to get it. But faith operates on completely opposite principles that defy everything the world taught you about scarcity and limitation. When you make a withdrawal from a traditional bank, your account balance decreases. But when you make a withdrawal from heaven's bank through faith, your balance actually increases. Every act of belief strengthens your capacity to believe even more. Every declaration of abundance in the face of lack deposits more spiritual currency into your account. Florence Scovel discovered that most people are spiritually bankrupt not because they don't have access to divine currency, but because they don't know how to spend it. They hoard their faith, saving it for emergencies instead of using it daily. They're like millionaires who die broke because they kept their wealth hidden under the mattress. The transaction process in God's economy is beautifully simple, yet most people overcomplicate it. First, you must decide what you're purchasing with your faith. Are you buying into fear or into abundance? Are you investing in lack or in provision? Your faith is constantly being spent on something. The question is, what? Every time you declare, I can't afford that, you're making a faith transaction that purchases limitation. Every time you say money never stays with me, you're using your spiritual currency to buy poverty consciousness. Every time you worry about bills, you're investing your faith in fear-based outcomes. But Florence Scovel revealed the flip side of this spiritual law. When you declare, I am provided for, even when your bank account looks empty, you're purchasing divine intervention with your faith. When you speak abundance over your future, even in present lack, you're making a deposit that will manifest in the physical realm. The most powerful aspect of faith as currency is that it works regardless of your education, background, or current financial status. A minimum wage worker who operates in faith can access the same divine resources as a billionaire. A single mother struggling to pay rent has the same spiritual currency as a Wall Street executive. This levels the playing field in ways that shock the natural world. Florence Scovel witnessed situations where people with no traditional qualifications or resources achieved extraordinary breakthrough simply because they understood how to transact with faith. The exchange rate between faith and manifestation is always in your favor when you understand the system. One moment of pure, unwavering belief can produce results that years of human effort couldn't accomplish. One declaration spoken with absolute conviction can shift circumstances that seemed impossible to change. But here's where most people miss it. Faith transactions require you to pay up front. You can't wait to see the results before you make the investment. You must spend your faith first, then watch the manifestation follow. This is completely opposite to how the world operates. In dos degi, earthly transactions, you see the product before you pay. But in spiritual transactions, you pay with belief first, then receive the visible evidence. You praise before the breakthrough. You give thanks before the answer arrives. You act as if it's done before it looks done. Florence Scovel taught that your faith account is already loaded with everything you need. The limitation is never in heaven's supply. It's in your willingness to make the transaction. Most people window shop in the divine economy, but never actually purchase anything because they're waiting for confirmation before they pay. The most successful people in the spiritual realm are those who became comfortable with faith transactions. They learned to spend their belief boldly, knowing that divine returns always exceed the investment. They stopped asking, "What if it doesn't work?" and started declaring, "I know this is already done." When you master faith as currency, money becomes your servant instead of your master. Provision flows to you instead of away from you. Opportunities seek you out instead of avoiding you. You stop living from paycheck to paycheck and start living from promise to promise. Living from the unseen realm. Here's a truth that will blow your mind. Everything you see in the physical world first existed in the invisible realm. Your house was once just an idea. Your car was once a blueprint. Your smartphone was once a vision in someone's imagination. Florence Scovel discovered that the unseen realm isn't just real. It's more real than what your eyes perceive. This revelation changes everything about how you approach abundance. Most people live backwards. They only believe what they can see. But Florence Scovel unlocked the secret that revolutionizes reality. You must believe before you see. The unseen realm is where all creation begins, and faith is your access pass to that dimension. Think about this. Scientists tell us that what we perceive as solid matter is actually mostly empty space. The chair you're sitting on, the device you're reading this on, it's all energy vibrating at different frequencies. What feels solid and permanent is actually fluid and changeable. If the physical world itself is more illusion than substance, how much more powerful must the spiritual realm be? Florence Scovel taught that your current financial situation is just a snapshot, not the full story. What you see in your bank account is yesterday's faith made manifest. But what exists in the unseen realm right now is tomorrow's reality waiting to be born. The question is, what are you believing into existence today? The average person looks at their circumstances and says, "This is my reality." But someone operating from the unseen realm says, "This is just my starting point." They understand that visible conditions are temporary and changeable, while spiritual truth is eternal and unchangeable. When Florence Scovel faced apparent lack, she didn't panic or despair. She knew that abundance already existed for her in the spiritual realm. She just needed to align her consciousness with that reality. She would speak to her situation, as if the desired outcome was already accomplished. She would give thanks for provision before it appeared. She would act in faith while walking by sight showed only problems. This isn't positive thinking or wishful hoping. This is spiritual law in operation. The unseen realm responds to faith the same way the physical realm responds to natural law. When you drop something, gravity pulls it down. When you believe something with unwavering faith, spiritual law pulls it into manifestation. But here's what trips most people up. There's often a time lag between the spiritual transaction and the physical manifestation. You might plant a seed today, but the harvest doesn't appear until later. During that waiting period, your faith gets tested. Will you keep believing when nothing seems to be happening? Will you maintain your confession when circumstances look contrary to your prayers? Florence Scovel discovered that this waiting period isn't punishment, it's preparation. The delay allows you to develop the spiritual muscle necessary to carry the blessing when it arrives. It also gives God time to orchestrate circumstances, move people into position, and create the perfect conditions for your breakthrough. Living from the unseen realm means you stop being a victim of circumstances and start being a creator of them. Instead of reacting to what is, you respond to what can be. Instead of settling for current conditions, you speak future possibilities into existence. This is why Florence Scovel could remain calm in financial storms. While others panicked about economic uncertainty, she rested in spiritual certainty. She knew that regardless of what was happening in the visible realm, the unseen realm contained infinite supply, unlimited opportunities, and already prepared solutions. The most successful people intuitively understand this principle, even if they don't use spiritual language to describe it. Entrepreneurs see businesses before they exist. Investors recognize value before the market does. Innovators create solutions before problems become obvious to everyone else. But Florence Scovel took this understanding to a supernatural level. She didn't just visualize success. She communed with the divine intelligence that orchestrates all success. She didn't just think positive thoughts. She aligned her consciousness with eternal truths that never change regardless of temporary conditions. When you learn to live from the unseen realm, you stop being impressed by present limitations and start being expectant about future possibilities. You stop measuring your potential by your current resources and start calculating it based on your spiritual connections. Your job becomes staying faithful to the vision until it manifests. Your responsibility is maintaining belief until the breakthrough arrives. Your assignment is speaking life into the situation until life appears. The unseen realm isn't waiting for permission to bless you. It's waiting for faith to release what's already prepared. The power of declaration, speaking your reality. Words aren't just sounds that disappear into the air. They're creative forces that literally design your future. Florence Scovel understood, something that modern science is now proving. Your words carry energy, frequency, and the power to restructure reality itself. Every declaration you make is either building the life you want or reinforcing the life you don't want. Here's what will shock you. The difference between people who live in abundance and those who struggle with lack isn't talent, education, or background. It's the words they speak consistently, especially when no one else is listening. Florence Scovel discovered that your private conversations with yourself become your public reality. Think about the words that automatically come out of your mouth when you think about money. Do you say things like, "I can't afford that," "Money doesn't grow on trees," or "I'm so broke"? Every time you speak those words, you're programming your subconscious mind and sending instructions to the universe about what kind of financial reality you want to experience. But Florence Scovel revealed the flip side of this spiritual law. When you consistently declare abundance, provision, and divine supply, even when your circumstances look the opposite, You're literally speaking new realities into existence. You're not lying to yourself. You're aligning with higher truth that transcends temporary conditions. The most successful people throughout history understood this principle intuitively. Before they achieved anything significant, they spoke it into existence. They declared their success before it was obvious to anyone else. They affirmed their destiny before it became their reality. Florence Scovel took this understanding to a supernatural level. She didn't just speak positive words. She spoke words that agreed with God's promises. She understood that when your declarations align with divine truths, they carry the full backing of heaven's authority. That's why her words produced miracles that defied natural explanation. Here's the part that changes everything. Your words don't just describe your world, they create it. Every declaration is like a seed planted in the soil of consciousness. Speak lack consistently, and you'll harvest financial struggle. Speak abundance persistently, and you'll reap supernatural provision. But most people sabotage their own blessings without realizing it. They might pray for abundance in the morning, then spend the rest of the day speaking words of fear, limitation, and doubt. They cancel their own prayers with their casual conversations. Florence Scovel taught that your words must become consistent with your desires. If you want financial breakthrough, you can't afford to speak words that reinforce financial bondage. If you're believing for divine provision, you must stop giving voice to scarcity consciousness. This isn't about pretending problems don't exist. It's about choosing which reality you're going to empower with your words. You can acknowledge challenges without speaking defeat. You can face difficulties without declaring impossibility. The practice of speaking abundance before it manifests feels awkward at first. Your logical mind will resist. Your emotions might not match your declarations. Your circumstances will seem to contradict your confessions. But this is where faith separates itself from feeling. Florence Scovel discovered that declarations work even when you don't feel them, sometimes especially when you don't feel them. The power isn't in the emotion behind the words. It's in the spiritual authority you carry when you speak in alignment with divine truths. When you declare, "I am blessed and highly favored," while facing financial pressure, you're not lying. You're calling forth truths that exist in the spiritual realm. When you say, "Divine doors of opportunity are opening for me during a season of closed doors," you're not being naive. You're activating spiritual law. The transformation happens gradually, then suddenly. As you consistently speak words of abundance, your mind begins to shift. You start noticing opportunities you previously overlooked. Your actions begin to align with your declarations. Your energy changes. Your expectations rise. And the universe begins to respond to your new frequency. Florence Scovel witnessed this process countless times. People who changed their words changed their lives. Those who guarded their declarations like precious seeds eventually harvested miraculous breakthroughs. Your words today are writing the script for your tomorrow. Every declaration is either agreeing with limitation or partnering with possibility. The choice is yours, but the consequences are inevitable. Start speaking your desired reality into existence. Declare abundance over your finances. Affirm divine favor over your opportunities. Speak blessing over your future. And watch as your words become the blueprint for your breakthrough. Operating in heaven's economy. This is where everything comes together, where spiritual truth meets practical action, where faith becomes lifestyle, where you step completely out of the world's broken system and into God's perfect economy. Florence Scovel didn't just teach these principles. She lived them daily, and her life became a testimony of what's possible when you fully embrace divine provision. Heaven's economy operates on laws that seem backwards to earthly thinking, but they are more reliable than any financial system ever created. In the world's economy, you work to earn. In God's economy, you receive to give. In the world system, you hoard to feel secure. In heaven's system, you release to create flow. Florence Scovel discovered that operating in heaven's economy doesn't mean becoming careless with money or ignoring practical wisdom. Instead, it means making decisions from a place of divine confidence rather than fear-based desperation. It means budgeting with faith, planning with expectation, and working from rest rather than striving. When you truly understand that God is your source, everything changes. Your job becomes a channel, not your security. Your investments become tools, not your trust. Your bank account becomes a measure of stewardship, not a measurement of worth. You stop living at the mercy of economic conditions and start living from the abundance of spiritual truth. This shift in perspective is revolutionary. While others panic during recessions, you rest in the knowledge that heaven's economy never crashes. While others fear inflation, you trust in divine provision that increases to meet every need. While others compete for limited resources, you operate from the understanding that God's supply is infinite. Florence Scovel witnessed miracle after miracle when people learned to operate from this realm. Businesses that should have failed thrived beyond explanation. Debts disappeared through supernatural interventions. Opportunities manifested from impossible directions. People discovered that when you partner with divine intelligence, solutions appear that human wisdom could never devise. But here's the key that unlocks everything. Heaven's economy requires you to be a conduit, not a container. You're blessed to be a blessing. Provision flows through you, not just to you. When you give generously, you create more capacity to receive. When you hold tightly to what you have, you block the flow of what's coming. This is where most people struggle. They want heaven's abundance, but with earth's security mindset. They want divine provision, but without divine trust. They want supernatural supply, but with natural control. But you can't access the higher realm while clinging to lower thinking. Florence Scovel taught that operating in heaven's economy requires a complete surrender of the need to figure everything out. You don't need to know how God will provide. You just need to trust that He will. You don't need to see the full path. You just need to take the next step in faith. When you live this way, you begin to experience what Florence Scovel called divine timing. Resources appear exactly when needed. Opportunities open at the perfect moment. Solutions arrive just before problems become overwhelming. You stop living in stress about the future and start walking in peace about the present. The practical application is simple but profound. You make decisions based on spiritual leading rather than just financial calculation. You give when prompted, even if it doesn't make sense to your natural mind. You invest in what builds the kingdom, not just what builds your portfolio. You seek first the kingdom of God, knowing that everything else will be added. This doesn't mean becoming irresponsible or naive. It means becoming sensitive to divine guidance in all your financial decisions. It means praying about purchases, seeking wisdom about investments, and allowing God to direct your giving. It means understanding that stewardship is about management, not ownership. Florence Scovel's life demonstrated what happens when someone fully embraces heaven's economy. She lived with a confidence that transcended circumstances. She gave with a generosity that defied logic. She received with a gratitude that multiplied blessings. She walked in a level of provision that amazed everyone who knew her story. You have access to this same economy, the same divine resources, the same spiritual laws, the same heavenly account with your name on it. The only question is, will you step out of the world's system of fear, competition, and limitation and step into God's system of faith, abundance, and supernatural supply? The invitation is open. Heaven's economy is operating right now. Your divine banker is waiting for your withdrawal. Your spiritual currency is already in your account. The only question left is, what will you purchase with your faith today?